Hello and welcome to this exclusive Apex interview with Touch, an airline CSP taking new approaches to content strategy, distribution, and revenue generation. Joining me today from Touch are André Valera, Director of Business Development, and Joe Carreira, Founder and CEO. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, why don't you give us the 30-second elevator pitch of what Touch is all about?
Well, the 30-second pitch. Above all, we anchor in great customer service. Everything that we do is based on great customer service. We see ourselves as digital experience managers, and our job using data-driven curation is to provide great content on board the aircraft that keeps people engaged and helps improve the flight experience. And to be able to do so at as low cost as possible, and using technology to also deliver to the aircraft as efficiently and as possible in a flexible manner.
All right, you talked about data-driven content curation, which I think is a really hot topic right now. The CSP business was already in the throes of this exact sort of evolution prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. So what sort of changes, in addition to more data-driven curation, were already taking place?
That's a very good question, Maryann. Actually, we believe that prior COVID, definitely some new requests, new changes, new disruptions were happening in this field. And we of course, as a content service provider, the legacy functions and features that we need to deliver is to be the broker between the airlines and content owners and license the content and then be responsible to manage that process. As Joe said, we see ourselves as much more than that, and as digital experience managers. And as you were referring about the touch, the need for analytics, more than that, the actual supply chain needs to be disrupted. You need to be able to turn out content much faster. You need to be able to do that much more efficiently with much more affordable solutions. So you need to disrupt the entire supply chain from a technological perspective, and of course with that enable new business models around content licensing. So I think those kind of things were already in place before COVID hit us. Those changes, you can see that in the content community as well, where they are disrupting themselves with the OTT platforms approach. So we need to do the same kind of disruption exercise, definitely.
How does the Touch Media Center work, and how is it driving, a more accessible ecosystem for everybody involved?
What Touch Media Center does is enabling an interface with a kind of a shopping cart look and feel, so that airlines or digital experience managers, as we see ourselves, can curate and discover content and go through all these tools that enable the engagement on board, so video content, audio content, and any other sorts of content, and discover and curate and make that selection and have that experience as we have with the e-commerce platforms that we usually use to shop around. So that's the goal of Media Center, to create that interface. And then, as a second step, in the background, we enable all the processes that we need to have so that we can have the content on board. So all the processes of generating and working on metadata, the processes of creating all the orders and contracts that we need to close from a licensing perspective, even technical perspective, and everything that we need to do to actually start the pipeline of content processing, media processing, up to the point that they are on board. All of that process is the responsibility of a company like ours, and usually it's something that takes a lot of time. It's managed through a lot of different persons, different teams, and involving different stakeholders, peers, and partners. With Media Center, we automate all of those processes. We have that in a single automated workflow that starts with that interface where the airline was in control when made the selection. So the cool thing about it is that we automate things, and with that we can of course lower costs and go after that flexibility and efficiency airlines are seeking.
I love it. I love the simplicity of the shopping cart approach. And I think as a lot of us are housebound through various rounds of lockdown, we all have a lot of experience shopping online and filling our shopping carts. So that sounds like an interface that people will have no difficulty using. Reducing cost and complexity is another thing that's really at the top of mind for airlines right now. So can you tell us about Above and how you're working together with Cast Labs on this project?
Absolutely. So above in the end is after having the content selection on that interface, on that shopping cart, then we need to continue the job to be done, which is to process the content. So at above, we have the ability to do that as we have a cloud-based platform that can process all of these requests of content handling, because we need to get the original source of the content, so the original files, and have them formatted according to the specific systems for each airline. So it's a complex process, and what we do in above is the same sort of perspective that we implemented in Touch Media Center. So we automate the process and we make it easier and much more affordable and faster. We work with CAS Labs already for 4 years, and we actually work with them and Lufthansa Systems in a project where we actually built an infrastructure completely isolated from the usual post-production facility processes, where we consolidated the processes of making encoding, DRM protection, watermarking of content, so preparing the content to be on board. After this 4 years project, along the way, we of course understood that we can leverage this and scale up the approach to the entire ecosystem. So we are doing that. So together with CAS Labs and Lufthansa Systems, we are implementing this at the first step for all customers of Touch, and of course soon enough for all the community, for all that ecosystem. We aim to welcome all content sources to above, enable this pipeline efficiencies to everyone, and of course introduce the much appreciated cost efficiencies. We can reduce all of these media handling costs by a factor of 10, not 10%, 10 times the cost of processing content. So we really look forward for that.
Right. Wow. Well, that is an impressive improvement right there. Above is based on Amazon Web Services. Why does this make the most sense?
That's an interesting question, and there are a lot of options, of course, out there for you to have your cloud infrastructure. When we started to work with CAS Labs, they were experts in AWS. They already worked with them for quite some time, and also Amazon Web Services enable and provide tools and features that we can connect to our workflow and leverage.
All right, finally, let's talk about content again. While Hollywood content is always very popular with passengers on board, you know, when a passenger is watching a Hollywood film, they're not necessarily engaging with the airline's brand, and they're not spending money either. So what other content strategies are you guys employing right now to boost ancillary revenue at a time when it's so important, and also work on airline loyalty?
Interesting question. When it comes to content is really the anchor that keeps people engaged with the system. If we did not have that, people would, somebody would be interested in retail, would go and do his retail, interact with the retail component of the ecosystem, and it will be done with interaction. In interacting with the system, you are interacting with the brand. You're always giving a positive light to the brand as the brand is providing you with services and options and so on. And when people are done with one component of it, there's always something they can go back to, which is the entertainment itself, the content itself, that keeps people engaged in a positive manner with the system. So Hollywood, as the number one content used on board the aircraft, is a very key component, not just of the brand, it's a very key component of keeping people engaged and attracting revenues. We also have developed content solutions that are really inspired by the brand, so that using TAP as an example, we developed destination videos that proved to be one of the most popular content on board the aircraft. Popular from the perspective not just of how many people clicked into it, but how long did they engage with the content. And it has proven to be a solution that it worked well 2 years ago and continues to perform as one of the better content options on board the aircraft. And that is clearly attached to the brand of the airline and the priorities of the airline. So again, their content becomes a very key element to not just for entertainment on board the aircraft, but also attracts future revenue to the airline. And from an advertiser's perspective, again, we're looking at developing content solutions that not only are in tune with what the passenger wants, not only are in tune with the brand and how the airline positions itself in the marketplace, but it also makes sense and attracts the type of advertisers. So programmatic advertising very much depends on those sort of solutions. So then again, you see the content being a component that attracts revenues. And the other thing that we did, and André has explained, is from a technology perspective, we needed to be able to bring solutions that would quickly bring on board the aircraft the type of content that, for example, the advertisers want to be associated with. You have to look at the advertisers and you have to look at the retail as customers by themselves, so that our customer is not just the airline, our customer is not just the passenger, our customer is the advertiser. And how do we use these tools that we've developed in order to serve the advertising customer? And that is one of the reasons why we were so keen in introducing flexibility on the operational process, so that we could finally have an industry that not only served the customer and the airline, but also served the advertising community reflects a lot of the revenue opportunities that exist on board the aircraft.
Yeah, I think we've been trying to crack the code on the IFE advertising for a very long time. And yeah, I definitely do think that we're getting closer now than ever. And I do think that the pandemic has definitely driven a lot of this forward-thinking solutions forward.
Yeah, and the other thing we're finding is that, all these measures that we have taken in the process of trying to engage the passenger and satisfy the passenger, satisfy the airline, and satisfy the ancillary revenue solutions that we're looking for is, and the measurements that we use through our Touch Analytics tool, we see the return on investment becoming much more clear on a lot of these elements that we brought on board the aircraft. And we see NPS going up on the airlines that we have access to the NPS measurements and incorporate them into our Touch Analytics tool. So we definitely know that we're on the right track, and these things become that much more important during, for the foreseeable future as we all are trying to minimize our costs, be more efficient as we are trying to deal with the impact of COVID-19.
Yeah, well, more money and higher NPS sounds like a win all around to me. Guys, how can people learn a little bit more about what Touch has to offer?
Well, definitely we would welcome everyone to engage with us and visit us at our virtual booth at the FTE Apex Virtual Expo next month. We're looking forward to engage with everyone that wants to learn more about us and gets to know us. Also, we would welcome everyone to visit our website and to go through our stories in our blog. We have been posting quite a lot about the new things we have been developing over the last few months. So we'll definitely welcome that, and of course to get in touch with me and Joe. We will be happy to learn your needs and see what we can do for you.